The right cologne can make or break important life moments. With the right fragrance, you can nail that job interview or land that date. But with the wrong scent, you might come off like you're trying too hard to smell like the inside of a Porsche. Scent makes a big difference and is often a bigger first impression than your appearance. I've made a few videos on different fragrances in the past. I've tried hundreds of colognes and fragrances in the past 7 years, some that have been amazing, and others that have been, well, not so good. I've always held out and gatekept my personal favorite fragrances. However, that changes today. As I put you on what I think my personal favorite fragrances are, as someone who's been into fragrances for the past 7 years. Not only are these some of the best fragrances that I've found, but these are a little bit more niche and I don't see them talked about as much in other fragrance circles. Not only am I going to give you guys my recommendations based off of what I think the best smelling fragrances are, but also give you a full review with a full price breakdown, stats on how long it lasts and its sillage, so that you know what some of the best fragrances on the market are. If you don't know me, my name is Karsten Kroening. I'm a clothing designer based out of Seattle, Washington, who sometimes also makes YouTube videos with Wojaks in them. One of the reasons I'm making this video now, I've been working on a project with my clothing brand for the past 2 years to release a signature fragrance to go alongside the clothing. The fragrance is called Black Lodge, and to sort of celebrate its release, I wanted to show you some of my favorite colognes. Black Lodge is of course my favorite personal fragrance because I made it and it's a combination of all the things that I love, but we'll talk more about that later. Let's just focus on getting through the list and me showing you guys the best fragrances you don't know about. The first fragrance that I would recommend is Us by Neandertal. Propositionally, I think the concept that Neandertal is trying to sell you is they want you to smell like an ancient man from a cave. The vibe of this fragrance in particular will make you smell more like the most clean-cut and put-together person in a very, very classy bar. There is a sense where this fragrance does somewhat make you smell like a Viking, but a Viking who is clean, classy, has great taste in whiskey, and also listens to Nick Drake and The Cure. While the name suggests that this would make you smell like the spunk of a proto-evolutionary subspecies of man, this fragrance is actually much more complex and nuanced and is extremely pleasant. Top notes of black pepper, elemi, eucalyptus, bergamot, orange, pink pepper, incense, cardamom, geranium, rose, cade oil, vetiver, oud, cypriol oil, myrrh, landandum, moss, hyrax, sandalwood, and musk. Us has a lot of notes in it, but the overwhelming majority of them are these very traditionally spicy, warm aromatics. Elemi, black pepper, myrrh, incense, which makes sense from a brand called Neandertal. They can oftentimes become these very ritualistic, harsh-smelling fragrances that can be polarizing. But what makes Us by Neandertal particularly clever and pleasant is they mix all these spicy aromatics with notes like rose, geranium, and eucalyptus. These are unconventional pairings in a masculine, spicy, traditional fragrance that make it a lot more pleasant. Rose is a particular note that sticks out, and it doesn't make this fragrance smell feminine in any way. Instead, when it's balanced out against the harshness of those spicy aromatics, it really creates a dynamic, complex smell that's just overwhelmingly really pleasant and classy. You're able to get that traditional smell without becoming overbearing or smelling too much like an old church. It's almost like a more elite version of Margiela's Jazz Club or By the Fireplace, and it's very warm, classy, masculine, but this is with a little bit more nuance to it. When it comes to how long this fragrance lasts, this is an impressively long-lasting fragrance, and sillage is how far away you need to be to smell the fragrance. With this fragrance being a medium, you're probably going to be able to smell it if you're having a normal conversation with somebody. Now, the one thing about this fragrance, in a host of amazing things about it, is that it is very, very expensive. One of the reasons for it is because it comes in a very cool, unique bottle that will look really cool on your nightstand or wherever you put your fragrances. But it is $130 for 30 milliliters, which is at the high end of most niche fragrances. It's about $4 per milliliter, which is not uncommon for niche fragrances to be this expensive. But again, $4 per milliliter is pretty expensive. That being said, I think you're getting a lot of value from it still, as it is so long lasting, it has a great ciliage, and the scent that it brings to the table is very complex, warm, and classy. Next fragrance I'd recommend is Concrete by Comme des Garçons. Comme des Garçons is a traditionally avant-garde clothing label based out of Japan, but as equally as well known as their unconventional clothes at this point is their unconventional scents. If you've ever wanted to smell like wet rain on concrete, well, fashion house Comme des Garçons has the perfect scent for you. The concept of this fragrance is to do that. Have a scent that smells like wet rain on concrete. This scent really does evoke that sort of fresh rain and spring vibe, but it's a lot more complex than just that. There's notes of sandalwood, rose oxide, cumin, cardamom, and some musk and jasmine. This scent is very powdery and synthetic to some degree, but not in a bad way at all. It's just very unique. If you're looking for a scent that's going to smell brutalist, futuristic, maybe even some sort of technological cyber way, this is going to be the one for you. This scent is very bright and fresh, but not in a way that's going to be familiar. It's just a really weird palette that you don't get from a lot of other scents. It's not necessarily masculine or feminine. It's just really neutral and pleasant. And when I first bought this scent, I think 6 years ago, people would constantly come up to me and ask me what it was because it is so unique. Scent of someone who wants to smell like a clone or like a Mandalorian. It's sci-fi, it's foreign, it's obelisk, it's neutral. If you want to smell like you're from the future, this is that scent. When it comes to how long lasting it is, it's medium to long. I would give it about a 7. Its ciliage is also medium to high. You might be able to smell this one at a considerable distance from the person, and you're definitely going to pick it up if you're having a conversation with them. Price point of this one is $200 for an 80 milliliter, which is a really great price, coming at around $2.50 per milliliter. This is a great value per milliliter of what you're getting, and for it being so stable on how long it lasts, as well as having a pretty powerful ciliage, this is a great value. But again, it's going to be not for everybody. I do think this scent really does sort of smell like how I imagine Camino from Star Wars smelling. The next scent is my favorite, and it's because I made it. And this is Black Lodge by me, Karsten Kroening. I've run a clothing brand for the last three to 4 years, and I knew in the very beginning I wanted it to be somewhat of a lifestyle brand. So at the end of year 1 of my brand, I met the guys from Fractal Fragrances, and we started on working on a scent that could sort of accompany the clothes that were coming out. And making a scent takes a very long time. You're basically trying formula after formula, seeing how you like that initial scent. Do you like the way it develops? Does it last long enough? And is the ciliage appropriate? It took us a long time to get the formula just right, but after 2 years, we eventually landed on this, which is Black Lodge. To me, Black Lodge is sort of a love letter to the Pacific Northwest, where I've lived for the past 7 years. The notes of this fragrance are black pepper and velvetier, cedar, salt, tobacco, orange flower, sandalwood, and ambergris. The name Black Lodge is also a reference to the TV show Twin Peaks, which also takes place in the Pacific Northwest. And the Black Lodge as a location has always fascinated me to a degree. It's this sort of portal that exists in the woods to this metaphysical purgatory or waiting room that's very surreal. It's a metaphysical contradiction that is both ancient and surrealist. It's a place where the universe and all of its logic breaks. You see that pattern in Borges's Aleph story, as well as in House of Leaves, or in just the concept of theophany, where time and space break. Trying to capture that, where you're walking through the woods of the Pacific Northwest and you come across that sort of black pool in the trees, and there's this sort of ritual and contradiction. So it's a woodsy, fresh, earthy fragrance with these traditional spicy ritualistic notes that make it a little bit more complex than just your average woodsy fragrance. If I had to say it smelled like a song, I would hope this smells like that Spiderland album by Slint. Currently, this is priced at $135 US for 60 milliliters, a great value of $2.25 per milliliter, which is really great for a niche perfume. It's also very long lasting and has a medium to far ciliage. Overall, I'm super proud of this. I think the value, the practicality, and of course the scent itself, all of these things speak for itself. It's a combination of my favorite scents, my favorite things. This is now available at karstenkroening.com, link in the bio. The next fragrance is Kafka by the Shore by La Folie Un Pleasure. This is sort of a soft, dark academia of fragrances in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because it's named after a Haruki Murakami novel, but that certainly doesn't help. This is probably the least aggressive or rugged fragrance on this list. Probably one of the sweetest fragrances on this list as well, as it's really vanilla forward. It's a vanilla leather tobacco that has some complex lavender notes in it as well, and have sort of this setting of cedar or oak in the background. Its notes are lavender, old books, iris, birch, tar, amber, musk, patchouli, cedarwood, oakwood, leather, vanilla, and I think there's some tobacco in there. It's an interesting balance to say the least. The vanilla is very forward and it's this sort of sweet, smoky fragrance. It's warm, it's friendly, it's somewhat tender and intimate. It's sort of a hopeless romantic of a fragrance in my opinion. But with that being said, I think this fragrance is still pretty masculine, as that leather, tobacco, oak really do kind of set it in still like the masculine side of things, but in a more sort of vulnerable, maybe boyish way. Again, the fragrance is named after this Haruki Murakami novel, Kafka by the Shore, which is this kind of coming-of-age romance novel. This is the type of fragrance you'd wear on a date if you're really into reading books, Sigur Rós, and you call movies films. If that Jeff Buckley song Lover You Should Have Come Over was a fragrance, this would be it. Again, so this is a medium to long-lasting fragrance, a 6 to a 7, but its ciliage is definitely more intimate to a medium. If you're having a conversation with a person at a normal distance, they may or may not smell it, but it's really a more intimate fragrance for the most part. You have to be packed in the elevator with somebody, sitting next to them, or maybe your date is going well. It's definitely not the strongest ciliage, and it goes for about $160 for a 50 milliliter, which is around $3 per milliliter, just a little bit more, which is about middle of the road, a little bit more on the expensive side. Pretty fair for an independent niche fragrance. The Boris Bidjan Saberi Black fragrance. The best way I can describe this fragrance is a fresh industrial fragrance. It smells like freshly cut grass strewn about on a factory floor. Boris Bidjan Saberi is an avant-garde, darkwear, gothic designer who created this fragrance a couple of years back. He has two fragrances, one in white and one in black. While this was initially a self-titled fragrance, he released another fragrance a few years later, and I believe this was renamed to Tann, but most times if you look up Boris Bidjan Saberi Black, this fragrance comes up, so strange things with the name there. But this fragrance smells like a spring pine forest that has been artificially developed in the heart of Berlin. This fragrance sort of smells like the way that the band Planning for a Burial sounds. Most of the notes of this fragrance are not well known, but most people pick out leather, grass, industrial glue, and beeswax. There's a sense where this smells very synthetic, like that concrete fragrance by CDG. This smells like synthetically developed plant leather or plant matter. It's a very industrial black metal vibe of fragrance. It's dark, it's edgy, it's synthetic to a degree, but it's also bright and pleasant at the same time because of these fresh, grassy notes. It's a very complex balance of smells. And basically, if you want to smell like, I would say, like a cyborg who has just stepped out of the woods and only listens to Nine Inch Nails and Burzum, this is what that fragrance smells like to me. Again, nothing to be surprised from a designer like Boris Bidjan Saberi. This fragrance is a really complex and quite amazing smell. Unfortunately, it's not super long lasting. It fades pretty quickly. And then the ciliage is intimate to medium, but definitely more on that intimate side. Somebody's going to have to be really close to you to smell this fragrance. And somebody may be able to smell it in a normal conversation. I wouldn't bet on it. The other thing is this fragrance runs from about 300 to 350 USD, depending on where you can find it, at 100 milliliters, which means it's around $3 to $3.50 per milliliter, which is fair for a niche fragrance, a little bit more pricey, but not terrible. Price per milliliter is pretty decent, but again, the only option is the 100 mil, so you're gonna have to whip out $300 for this fragrance, meaning it is gonna be more expensive. But the fragrance and sort of the proposition that I think it delivers is so unique and interesting, which is why it makes the list. If the last fragrance is hyper unique and a very complex, sort of nuanced fragrance, the next one is kind of the complete opposite of that. Whereas with Black Pepper, again by CDG or Comme des Garçons, you're definitely getting what it's advertising. Black Pepper smells mainly like black pepper, with some added oud and patchouli also coming out. Its full notes are black pepper, cedar, agarwood, which is oud, patchouli, musk, and tonka bean. The strongest of those three are the black pepper, oud, and patchouli. What makes this one different from some of the other spicy aromatic fragrances on this list is that where those are somewhat complex and have an added layer, this in comparison is just a pretty cut and dry spicy aromatic fragrance, which is not a bad thing. Black Pepper set out to reach a very concrete and tangible goal, and it achieves that to a T. Black Pepper is not trying to be anything more than its advertising, and I think that's its advantage. It's a very pleasant, spicy, refined scent. It's orderly, it's professional. The best way I could describe this fragrance is this is like the Aphex Twin of fragrances. You know what you're going to get. It's a bit esoteric or alternative, but it's consumable and has no surprises. This fragrance has a medium longevity and a medium ciliage. And at $160 for 100 milliliters, that's $1.60 per milliliter. But this is the fragrance I would say is the best value of any on the list. A really fair longevity and a really fair ciliage, but you are sacrificing a more nuanced, complex fragrance for that value. Ouranon by Aesop. This is a fragrance that I think you would buy if you wanted to smell like you lived in a cave and were practicing alchemy, but in a very pleasant way where you also have some nice rugs and you're probably got incense going. A young Gandalf would smell like this. A young Gandalf that's probably big into Bob Dylan, Nick Cave, Leonard Cohen, and probably also cooks things with shallots in them. Ouranon is a fragrance that's by Aesop. Aesop is a relatively bigger company at this point, though their fragrances are still relatively new. Aesop or Aesop delivers a lot of different products with these very ritualistic essential oils in them. And so they've been launching their fragrances lately. They've launched a lot of them, and in some circles they've become pretty popular, though I don't think they're anywhere close to being as mainstream as like a Margiela or Le Labo at this point. But this fragrance in particular, the top notes are petitgrain, elemi, lavender flower, middle notes are hay, chamomile, frankincense, base notes myrrh, tonka, patchouli. I think, you know, a fair way of describing this fragrance is it's a very mineral spicy fragrance, and the lavender that's added gives it this heightened sense of complexity. This fragrance feels very ancient and ceremonial. The context that this scent lives in sort of makes sense in the same way that you could hear the music of New Order being played in a marble ancient temple and be like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you could also hear New Order in a very expensive contemporary architectural place, though also with marble, and be like, yeah, that makes sense. Now, the longevity of this fragrance is a medium, which is pretty good. Its ciliage is intimate to medium, though getting closer towards the medium. Overall, this fragrance goes for $200 for a 50 milliliter, which makes it $4 per milliliter, which is pretty expensive. Even though it's on the pricier side, this is still an amazing smell, and if it fits your vibe, it's going to be one of the better fragrances in your rotation. Hinoki by Monocle, a collaboration fragrance by Monocle and CDG. If you want to smell like a forest demigod or perhaps a very refined lumberjack, Hinoki would be the perfect fragrance for you. Hinoki is again by both Monocle and CDG, CDG being the Japanese avant-garde clothing company, and Monocle, which is a lifestyle travel magazine, sort of came alongside them and wanted to partner and make a few fragrances. And these fragrances were supposed to capture very specific places that Monocle had reported on in the past. And Hinoki is supposed to capture this experience of these hot baths or saunas in these Hinoki pine forests in Japan. And so, of course, trying to make a smell based off of this very specific experience, it's going to be a very woodsy smelling fragrance. You have cypress, Hinoki, cedar, thyme, black pepper, vetiver, Jupiter, oak moss. This is probably the most straightforward woodsy fragrance you can buy, but very specifically not in an earthy way. Instead, it's just full of a lot of tree fresh notes, which makes it, again, super fresh, bright, and pleasant, but in a very refined, not very earthy way. And if you're looking for something that can be both fresh, rugged, and refined at the same time, this is the perfect fragrance which can capture that dichotomy. This is the sort of vibe if you're trying to convey that yes, you do go to Montana and Alaska and go hiking and experience the forest and adventure, but at the same time, you may also go to Japan to ball out on Capitol. This is a Bon Iver sort of Japanese shoegaze-ass fragrance. Not aggressive, not very complex, but again, really straightforward and great. The longevity of this fragrance is medium to long lasting, being closer towards the long lasting side, and its sillage is medium, meaning if you're having a normal conversation, another person will definitely smell it. 130 USD for a 50 milliliter, that being $2.50 per milliliter. It's a really great price as well, and one that's been in my rotation for years and I continue to recommend to people. With that being said, guys, those are my recommendations. If you've smelled all of these fragrances before and you didn't feel as if any of them were niche, instead of saying that down in the comments, go recommend some other fragrances that you think are more niche instead. And again, if you want to check out the fragrance that I made, Black Laud, it's now available on KarstenKroening.com for 135 USD for 60 milliliters. And go check out the rest of the clothing I make as well. Thanks so much, guys, for watching this YouTube video. Really appreciate it, and have a great day.